Abditus, Revalre. Roy works for the government as what most would call a hunter or investigator, undergoing deployments to locations as an advanced investigator with a mission to find or explore mysterious activity, and either destroy the problem given or gather information about it. This government branch is called Abditus Revalre, which translates from Latin to English, reveal secrets. Yes, the government is very original with names, isn't it? Though it's better than the string of random numbers that are usually used. If you were to ask any military or government agent, they would say this branch is not real. This is true. Nobody knows of it, and those who do were chosen. The very first rule learned, the only way to be chosen for this job is to disappear. They are not allowed to have any ties to the normal world, disappearing from any written forms, leaving no trace of ever existing, no ties to family or friends. They don't exist, disappearing from society and only re-entering it in the directions of their missions. The next rule that's learned, don't depend upon others. Along the lines of this rule, only think about yourself and succeeding the mission. In this line of work, you either learn to let go of any moral code and do whatever it takes to complete the assignment, or die. There is no in-between, there are no heroes, there are no saviors, there is just getting the job done. That last rule, Roy believed, is bogus. He's worked in this field for 10 years and has not only survived, but has been saved due to his own selflessness many times. He also quite likes his moral code, however twisted it might be. He's human, and that's something he's proud of. He's seen enough in his life to know that being human is the most powerful asset of humanity. And sometimes he can't decipher between the government and the monsters he's sent to kill. Of course, all of his doubts concerning how the government works cannot, under any circumstance, be voiced. That would be asking for trouble, most likely in the form of actually disappearing from the earth. He likes his job, no matter how heartless it sometimes requires him to be. He likes the thrill and the knowledge and the satisfaction knowing people are safe with their families or friends. And maybe a little bit of the very justified murdering. That can be fun. The point is, he enjoys his job. So when someone rudely bursted into his office with no warning, he only almost immediately threw a knife towards the intruder's head. Knocking isn't a difficult feat, it's basic decency. He glared at the agent as they strutted towards his desk, not looking the least bit remorseful. Without a word, they not so gently slammed a yellow folder brimming with papers in front of him. As they began to stride toward the door, Roy picked it up. "What is this for?" Roy asked, waving the folder. The agent stopped at the doorway and glanced at him, scowling behind dark sunglasses. "Seriously, who wears sunglasses indoors?" "A mission," the agent curtly replied. Roy fought the urge to roll his eyes, instead schooling a neutral expression. "What is the mission about?" The agent turned towards him and crossed his arms. "All information needed is in the folder," he answered stiffly, frowning and glancing down at his watch impatiently. "If you have any additional questions, ask General Sterling." This time Roy didn't fight the impulse to roll his eyes. "Very helpful," he said, voice laced with sarcasm. He thumbed through the papers of the folder and watched as the agent exited the room. Quite a rude man. Roy made a mental note to search for the man's name, and his schedule, and which car was his. He turned his attention back to the folder and opened it. The first page gave an explanation of where the mission was, what he has to accomplish, and why he needs to go there. He flipped to the next page and was met with a blank page. He furrowed his eyebrows and flipped to the next, also blank. He blinked in bafflement. Why, all the pages in the folder, except for the first one, were blank. Roy stared at the only page out of 20 that had writing on it, then shrugged and read it. No point in questioning the ways of the government. Probably just a morose office worker who tried to find a bit of joy in confusing people. The mission sounded simple enough, albeit a bit vague. A remote coastal town in need of help. Weird things such as bleeding trees, disembodied voices, mutated animals, and overall irregular occurrences. A mission that's not distinct from any other basic ones. A mission for the trainees. Roy was a senior agent, someone who gets called upon for the more dangerous and unpredictable assignments. Not for mere child's play. With these thoughts in mind, Roy stood from his chair and headed to General Sterling's office. As he walked through the featureless halls that all looked the same, brightly lit and a default setting of monotony and dullness, he pondered over the mission. Obviously there's more to it than what's been informed. General Sterling most likely made it as vague as possible, so Roy didn't immediately take off. Either that, or the message had been coded. No matter. He'd find out soon enough. Maybe even transfer to a more challenging mission. His thoughts were interrupted as he crossed paths with one of the receptionists, a middle-aged blonde woman named Linda Hopsworth. Linda was walking in the hall, presumably on her lunch break, when she spotted Roy walking the opposite direction. Roy was trying to pretend he hadn't seen her when she called his name quite loudly, leaving no room for doubt of her presence. He silently sighed and stopped his fast pace, turning to face her. "Hello, Linda," he politely greeted, masking his annoyance. Ever since Roy found out about her affair with the secretary, she's been sickeningly nice. What she didn't know was that her fiancé already knew and was seeing another woman who Roy liked much better than Linda. "Hi, Roy. What are you doing?" she asked loudly, a wide smile that didn't quite reach her eyes gracing her features. "I've been assigned for a new mission," he replied tersely. She faked an interested gasp and moved closer, intruding in his personal space. "Oh? What's the mission?" "You already know I can't reveal information concerning missions," he answered, stepping back and allowing a hint of annoyance to seep through his tone. Linda pouted, then her eyes widened with revelation. "Is it that town near the ocean?" she asked in a hushed tone. Roy's expression momentarily flickered with confusion before returning to a neutral expression. "Perhaps," he said coolly. "Missions were supposed to be private." "Oh, you better be careful with that one. At least 3 teams have never returned," she exclaimed. "At least that's what I've heard." Roy's eyebrows furrowed. "Why do you know about it?" Linda grinned and leaned closer. "It's all anyone is talking about. If you mingled with the rest of us, you would know," she said in a stage whisper, then straightened up. "Bye! Hope you don't die." Roy watched as she walked away. I guess that answers his concerns. After several minutes of walking in no real rush, he stood beyond a door just like any other. Upon the door, at eye length, was the only thing not repetitive from all other doors. The silver cursive words General Sterling were engraved in the wood, and right below that, the number 289. Roy knocked firmly on the door, and a quiet voice beckoned him in. He opened the door to reveal a spacious office completely unlike the halls. The wallpaper was one of beige, and instead of the migraine-inducing ceiling lights, natural light from a decent-sized window illuminated the room, and lamps were waiting to be used when the sun's rays darkened. Residing opposite to the window, a shelf occupied with an assortment of books covered the entirety of a wall. On the far side of the room, a desk resided. A desk of dark wood. In front of it sat an empty chair, and sat behind it was a tired-looking man with eyes haunted from decades' worth of knowledge. He looked at Roy with weary blue eyes. The papers he was shuffling before the interruption were pushed aside as General Sterling turned his attention to Roy. "Hello, Roy," he addressed. "What can I help you with?" Roy shuffled into the room and glanced at the folder in his hand. He held it up for General Sterling to see. "Sir, why have you assigned me a basic mission?" General Sterling gestured for him to sit, to which Roy obliged. "Who's to say this is a simple mission? You have yet to provide an opportunity for accurate judgment." He replied slowly, his response causing Roy to stifle an exasperated scoff. He enjoys General Sterling's vague responses when it's irritating someone else, but it is very annoying when directed at him, even if he knows the reason. "Respectfully, can you please reply concerning the actual answer?" Roy bluntly requested, smiling in what he hoped was a polite and respectful manner. General Sterling sighed and shifted his weight to lean forward, his elbows resting on the desk and his hands clasped together. "All my people sent to this place have not returned. I need my best man out there to figure out the problem and either terminate or fix it, along with finding out what happened to the missing agents." Roy stared at him with a deadpan expression. "Well, that's reassuring," he said dryly. "Not ominous at all. Are you willing to accept? I do have one more question. I noticed there isn't much information about the place, or about who I need to meet up with. Why is that?" Roy asked, tilting his head inquisitively. The call was anonymous. Roy's eyes narrowed. "That's suspicious." "I know." General Sterling said, "You don't have to go. I'll send someone else." Roy pondered over his reply. "Might as well go. I didn't sign into the government for healthcare," he replied, his mouth quirking up with a hint of anticipation. General Sterling's usual tired eyes softened. "Just be careful," he cautioned, then glanced down to resume his work. "I will, sir." Roy turned to leave, but paused. "Oh, one more thing." General Sterling looked up. "That agent you sent me, what's his name?" General Sterling's eyes crinkled in subtle amusement. "I cannot disclose personal information, Roy." Roy grinned and exited the room. Packing for the trip was not difficult. He grabbed his heavy-duty, waterproof hiking bag and his duffel bag, stuffing the latter with essentials such as knives, guns, and ammo, a week's worth of clothing, and some books. In his hiking bag he packed a large water bottle, a compass, a fire starter kit, a camera, laptop, some more knives, and a notebook with a pen. With the folder in his hand, Roy walked towards his designated car, a very well taken care of 1970s Bentley. He opened the trunk to find an assortment of weapons, then opened the driver's door and entered the vehicle, tossing the folder into the passenger's seat. He reached for the radio knob and turned it up, scrunching his nose as pop music blasted through the car. After a minute of fumbling with the radio controls, he finally found the station tuner. Peppy jazz echoed throughout the vehicle, and he nodded in satisfaction, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel to the beat. After a moment of adjusting to the car's way of operating, he began to drive.